Graduation Equity webinar series. Jocelyn Nunez, like I just said, I'm student engagement and support. I'm a program supervisor, and today we're talking about organizational wellness for equity. This meeting is being recorded and should be available in the next couple of days on YouTube. Closed captions are available in the menu if you want to take advantage of that. This PowerPoint is posted on the OSPI Graduation Equity webinar page if you want to go ahead and follow along, and we'll also drop it in the chat. So thanks again for being here. I appreciate everyone tuning into the chat. Please feel free. We've received some feedback that you all want to know who's here and who's present. So if you'd like to, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat with your name, role, your district, and just tell us something that you're curious about today. This webinar is brought to you through the Office of Student Engagement and Supports at OSPI. And at OSPI, we believe that each student needs to be prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. The Graduation Equity webinar series was created with the purpose of highlighting practices that increase access to education and ultimately to graduation. Though our webinars are striving to think critically, through our webinars, we are striving to think critically about historical context and the opportunities we have to get curious about and dismantle policies and practices that do not serve our communities. At this moment, I am actually remotely stationed in Eastern Washington, specifically in Pasco, where the trees are looking more bare, and I'd like to think that they're getting a winter nap that will replenish them for a beautiful spring. We ask that the participants of this meeting honor the traditional lands where you are today. Our resource sheet has links to an overlapping map if you'd like to go ahead and take a look. And in my life, I mostly travel around the intersections of the traditional lands of the Cowlitz, Yakima, and Palouse. I would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who are still living here today. Tribal consultation is a great way to get to know your local tribes and begin relationships that benefit our students, our families. And if you'd like to know more about it, we'd love to connect you with our Office of Native Education. The reason we're talking about organizational wellness today is that we know stress impacts learning. We all have bad days sometimes, and I know when I have one as a thought worker, it takes intentional time and strategies to be present and to be a good listener again. And helping professions, there's a metaphor with a lifeguard where you have to be able to breathe and help someone who's drowning, right? So school can be an overwhelming place, not just for kids, but for our teachers as well. And when teachers are feeling overwhelmed, we know kids feel that too. Real organizational wellness goes beyond asking the employee to take care of themselves and proactively make space for what employees need in a systemic way. Today, we're hoping to offer you some supportive ideas for organizational wellness that will impact your students, your staff, and impact a culture of support. In today's webinar, we hope you walk away knowing the impact staff wellness has on staff retention, mobility, and educational equity. We'll discuss collective responsibility as a critical component of student equity and community well-being. You'll learn about the science and background of wellness and supports building systems of care. We'll also talk about the opportunity districts have to provide collective systems of care for acknowledgement and transparency of the resources and demands within a school system. You'll also get access to intentional tools, resources, data, and repair structures to make that work happen. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Bridget Underdahl, who is our OSPI Mental Health Systems Assistant Director, and partners with Julie Christensen. Julie has her master's degree in public health with an emphasis in health behavior and health promotion. She is the Mental Health Systems Program Supervisor, also supporting our Project Aware. We'll also have a panel who is with us later on as well. We want to get to know who's in our audience today, so please take a moment to share your role, the grade band you work with, and how familiar you are with organizational wellness. Thank you. I see some folks in the chat. It's great. Well, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll get to hear from Bridget Underdahl about organizational wellness and the organizational wellness perspective from OSPI.
Thank you so much, Justin. We're going to start with my colleague, Julie Christensen, today on some of the why behind this work, and then I will continue that information before we move on to our panelists.
Thanks. Good morning. We will start today talking about some data, and you're all here with us this morning, so I think you'll be able to relate. There's a reason you're here. First, we wanted to share in early 2022, a survey released that teachers are twice as likely to experience job-related stress compared to other working adults. You'll also see from this bar graph that both teachers and principals are more likely to report burnout and symptoms of depression than other working adults and report less resilience. And just a note for the next couple slides, that's about data. Most of this data is collected, about teachers and principals and superintendents, but we acknowledge that this burnout and relates to all adults in school buildings, and each person in a school building is important. And just because the data hasn't been collected, I think we can acknowledge that these things impact them as well. So please know we're thinking about them when we report this data. According to a national survey in early 2020, this is a November 2021 survey that showed about almost half of teachers admitted that they were considering quitting. And unfortunately, a third of those, a little more than a third, were thinking about leaving the profession entirely. And when thinking about what that impact would be, the same data collection asked superintendents, what percentage of teachers quitting would create a cataclysmic drop in your organization's ability to educate young people? Their answers were shockingly low, with one superintendent answering one. Just one teacher quitting would hurt us in a bad way. And we see this impact extrapolated. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, pre-COVID, in January 2020, there were about 10.6 million educators. And then by February 2022, there's just 10 million. So that's a net loss of about 600,000. At OSPI, Bridget and I have the privilege to support districts to build school-based mental health systems. And we get to collect data and speak to staff. And we've heard a lot about burnout, that staff are unwell, teachers are not willing to do a training if it cuts into their time to actually prepare the classroom. And just really reiterating that they need a break and they need support. The National Education Association, that's the nation's largest union, conducted a survey of its members in early 2022, and they asked how to address burnout. The top two surveyed items reported were raising salaries, followed by providing additional mental health supports for students. And these are just a few things of why making staff wellness should be a priority. And I think we could probably think of infinite reasons why supporting the health and well-being of adults in school buildings is important. And I just wanted to reiterate a couple of those. So staff well-being correlates to educational equity. It's connected to staff retention and mobility. And staff wellness means a school community with adults that have the emotional capacity to build relationships and teach with rigor. So I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Bridget.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. I'm Bridget Underdahl. I'm the Assistant Director to Mental Health Systems here at OSPI. And I'm going to continue the conversation this morning. I'm going to give you the why, what, and how around organizational wellness in schools. And my wonderful colleague, Julie, has talked a lot about the why already. So just really briefly, what I'm going to mention is this quote that I love by Dina Simmons that says, "No one really learns well when teachers are stressed and burnout," which is why I say a stressed and burnout teaching force is an equity issue. If we believe in equity, we want our students to do well, we have to ensure our educators are doing well too. And just as Julie mentioned, I do want to make note, some of these quotes may make notes of educators or teachers. I'm going to make sure that I'm using language around educators and all staff, because when we're talking about a system of organizational wellness for adults, we're talking about every adult in the building. So our certified or classified, our educators or paraeducators, our nutritional aides, our bus drivers, our leadership, our counselors, every single adult within the system is the system that I'm talking about supporting because it has a direct impact to equity for youth. And I can flow into the what that makes up this work. What am I talking about? And I'll start with some shared language. And I think this is a really fantastic visual that really simply shows the total holistic wellness of an individual's impacts. So we can take a look at, we see systems level care, group level care, and self-care, and I'll talk through those. When we're thinking about organizational wellness within a workplace, that systems level care would be things like Julie mentioned, the data collected, salaries, mental health supports for students. It would be professional development that's required. It would be supports within the classroom for the students. It would be making sure that school supplies are covered at the school level, all the things that really all adults within a school system need to be the most successful would be our systems level care. Our group level care would be thinking about within a workplace, the ability to have a workspace that includes belonging, inclusivity, where folks within the workplace feel valued, opportunities to both give and receive gratitude. It would be knowing that that systems level care is increasing folks' ability to peer learn, to collaborate with colleagues within the school building, to plan and lesson plan and build curriculum. Self-care, and as you see along the side, self-care gets the most attention in our society, and it's absolutely a vital part of overall care. But it's also the most minimal part that impacts us. I think it gets talked about the most in our society and therefore gets the most attention because it's often spoken about, we hear it in things that we can buy. And self-care is absolutely, it's massages and things like that. But it's really important to be mindful that self-care is in a workplace, it might be the opportunity the system supports an individual taking a 2-hour assignment and giving themselves the grace to take 4 hours or 6 hours to complete it, both to do the best job they can, but to take care of themselves along the way. Self-care includes physical needs like taking a nap, a rest, a short walk, but it also includes mental rest, the ability to turn off your phone, shut down your work laptop, and step away from it for a little while. It also includes the ability to be creative. So the ability outside of work to pursue a hobby, such as drawing, painting, knitting, would just be a few examples. And it also includes that ability to take part in social rest. So for some folks, that's spending time alone. And for some folks, it's spending time with those that they feel most trusted and most encouraged to be around. So as we look at the totality of all overall wellness, we see how big the impact is on overall systems level care. And when systems level care is acknowledged, folks have more access to group level care and opportunity to take part in those practices, and then more opportunity to take part in their self-care. So we can see all of the possibilities and opportunities that workplaces have to both offer resources and supports around care and these varying needs and normalize wellness and care, and be really cognizant of overall demands on individuals within a workplace. I'll talk briefly about some of the supports that we offer here at OSPI. Again, like Julie mentioned, as educators and staff are surveyed, one of the highest pieces of need at 94% come the acknowledgement for mental health supports for students. So keeping that in mind, some of the things that we offer at OSPI include coordinating with regional behavioral health navigators and our UW Forefront partnership for suicide intervention, prevention, and postvention training and support structures. Julie mentioned some of the work that we're honored to be doing is in connection with Project Aware. This is a federal-based grant, and we have grantees across the state right now. And our grantees, we support them in building comprehensive and embedded mental and behavioral health systems to support students and adults. We also support building professional capacity for trauma-informed social emotional learning in schools. We offer a multi-tiered systems of support, workforce wellness, community of practice. And this is actually in connection with Kaiser Permanente and Alliance for a Healthier Generation. And I'll be talking more about that, but we're in our second year of supporting districts around thinking about and supporting their organizational wellness practices. We offer a variety of guidance and resources. Just one that I'll mention is the model plan template. for student social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health recognition, screening, and response. And as the resource document continues to be placed into the chat today, all of these things that I'm mentioning will be available to you in that document. We also offer statewide implementation support for House Bill 1363. And this is around workforce secondary traumatic stress. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this legislation. Workforce secondary traumatic stress, this legislation was passed in 2021. And just really briefly, I want to define secondary traumatic stress from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. It's the emotional duress that results when an individual hears about the firsthand trauma experiences of another. So it makes a lot of sense that our educators and staff within schools are impacted, have been impacted, could be impacted by this. So this piece of legislation that was implemented into school buildings in the 21-22 school year acknowledges this significant toll and takes steps forward in opportunities for districts and OSPI to support these practices for educators and staff within schools. Specifically, what districts are required to do from this legislation is to promote positive workplace climate and culture, to provide resources around secondary traumatic stress, adopt policy and procedure, and form a district mental health committee or wellness committee. And OSPI supports this. We were tasked with a few things through the legislator. We support this on our webpage. We have a Washington-specific assessment available, and this was a collaborative practice between OSPI and Alliance for a Healthier Generation. We also offer model policy, a variety of best practices, and resources to support this work. Also, what was started based on this legislation was a statewide leadership team made up of a variety of stakeholders to further the understanding and implementation impacts of secondary traumatic stress for educators. It's been a real heartfelt moment to see, while the statewide leadership team is no longer required from legislation, this is a variety of individuals across the state, including educators and staff members who are passionate about this work. So we now continue to meet 4 times a year as the Workforce Secondary Traumatic Stress Advisory Committee. And like I mentioned, we here at OSPI have had great partnership with Kaiser Permanente and Alliance for Healthier Generation, both for the resources created and, like I mentioned, the multi-tiered systems of support workforce wellness community of practice. We're in our 2nd year supporting districts meet full implementation of House Bill 1363 and either begin or continue the work around organizational wellness practices. So now I can talk a little bit about how this work looks in our state, both the systems framework, and then I'm going to give you a variety of information around specific practices before you hear even more information from our panelists. And like I mentioned, this work is being done through the multi-tiered systems of support framework. And here in Washington, these are the components that make that up. It's team-driven shared leadership. This would be involved in your mental health or wellness committee at the district level. Database decision-making at regular intervals, including reflection periods. Family, student, community, and staff engagement in the work. The continuum of supports, and I'm about to talk a little bit more about what specific resources or examples look like in a continuum of supports to uplift adults' wellness practices. And of course, throughout the planning structures, utilizing evidence-based practices. In our continuum of supports, and probably so many of us on this call are familiar with the multi-tiered systems of support, thinking about uplifting students' academic experience or their own wellness and utilizing the tiered model. As we incorporate a tiered model to support students in their own well-being, we can absolutely incorporate all adults within the system into the same tiered model. We know that adults' working environment is students' learning environment. And research shows there's a direct correlation between the impacts of adults' wellness within the school system and both the academic equity for students and students' own well-being within the school system. So I'll give you a few examples of what this looks like in practice. When we think about a tier 1, a universal, what will all adults in the school system need to be supported? And just a few examples might be things like a district-wide wellness plan, social emotional learning for adults, a well-being self-assessment. But just like our students, there will be some adults that need more. These are just the basics of humanities needs. So some adults will need some additional supports within tier 2, and some examples of tier 2 practices to support adults might be peer-led support groups, mentor-based programs, small group SEL skills, social emotional learning skills. And just like our students within the school, there will be a few adults who need additional services and supports. So a few adults will take part in tier 3 services as well, including things like employee assistance programs, both individual and group therapy, community-based or embedded services and supports, and professional development like psychological first aid training. I've been talking for a while now, and I would really love to check in with all of you. So what I would like to do is a waterfall protocol. So really briefly, you'll start putting into the chat the answer to this question. What is an example of a tiered support for adults you're doing or offering in your district? And then don't hit send yet. You'll hit send when I give you the go, and the go is 1, 2, 3, go. So at this point, why don't you put into the chat, but don't hit send yet, what is an example of a tiered support for adults you're doing or offering in your district? And in a moment, I'll tell you to hit send, and we'll see all of those lovely suggestions all at once. So I'll give you about 15, 20 seconds to share with us, if you would be so kind, what's an example of a tiered support for adults you're doing or offering in your district that you're aware of? Maybe type that last word, and it's okay if you send a little late too. But 1, 2, 3, go. Would you put them into the chat? Oh my gosh, that's so lovely to see. Thank you for sharing all at once. And we keep all of this information in the chat so we can both be learning more from our end and sharing out with folks. So I hope you're also looking through the chat for lots of information around what tiered supports look like in your school or district right now. And I'm seeing a lot of employee assistance programming. Smart Health would be another great example. Wellness days. Fantastic. These are really, really lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. And now I can continue to give you some more examples as you're also reading fabulous examples in the chat. So as we think about how we're supporting overall staff well-being in a school, I'll start with 3 ideas. And the first one being including educator and staff voice. So being really mindful of supplying opportunities to staff to participate in decision-making, support their professional growth, share what needs they have to be the most successful in the job that they do day in and day out. And a big part of that is then utilizing that data and building really strong tier 1 supports. So the tiered model that I showed you, if you've interacted with multi-tiered systems of support before, you can recall that there are often times that tier 2, definitely tier 3, can become overwhelmed with folks needing or receiving those types of services. And that tells us we need to take a look at tier 1 again, those foundational supports, What will all adults need to be successful in what they do? Adequate safety and support, normalizing time off, all of the practices. And one of the things that I see in this work that I do that comes up time and time again in the data and feedback from educators and staff is workload. Being intentional and taking stock of workloads. Equitable is not always giving equal tasks to all colleagues. Take things off plates whenever possible and be really clear about what is absolutely necessary to get done, maybe what has longer time limits, and supporting workplace cultures and climates overall. Now, as I mentioned, data, I've definitely heard this before, so I want to speak briefly to data in these next couple slides. It absolutely makes sense that you can't add another survey to start data collection processes around staff wellness. Folks are at capacity. You're not going to get responses back from another full survey. So a few pathways forward. You could add just a few workload or professional quality of life questions, and both of these toolkits are available to you in the resource package. There are also questions attached to Panorama. There's the Washington State assessment, a variety of places you could pull some questions off of and put them into existing school-based surveys that you know do well, like the big annual survey, folks respond to it, add a couple questions there. You could also use one-on-one interviews or capture some thinking from, excuse me, from focus groups or teams. And when you're thinking about what questions to utilize, I'll just give you a few ideas. So maybe one of these 4 questions you could put in your back pocket. The next time you're in a conversation, depending how appropriate it is and your level of comfort with that individual, you can pull out one of these questions and get a little piece of information, like what makes you proud about your work as an educator? Or what would you say you like about your work as an educator, staff member? What is one thing that might support your work? And how can school practices and policies be improved to reduce your stress? Another thing that's been shown to work is just trying a micro check-in. So just one question shared by text has shown to gather great response. It could be one of these questions, it could be another one, but just one question over text has shown to gather a great number of responses. And a few more things to think about as ways to get started or keep going on this work around organizational wellness in schools. School culture and climate is part of overall systems and group level care. So we want to make sure that we have environments that promote feelings of belonging, respect, value, trust for both the students and all of the staff members. We want to have positive school environments that support the growth of school community, where all of the members feel connected. And I like to give the example, I think a staff member's ability to take a day off and that practice is normalized is a really good example back to our initial triangle of thinking about self-care, group level care, and systems level care. So we can definitely think about that a staff member realizing for either their physical, mental well-being, they need to take a day or 2 off would be a practice of self-care. But they can really only engage in that if that process is both normalized and supported by the group. They know they're not doing undue harm by adding to others' workload if they take that day off. They know the system supports it by having subs available, normalizing the practice, making it as easy as possible, supporting staff members to write sub plans when necessary. So even just the practice of taking a day off is a really good example of all those levels of care being acknowledged within a workplace and a part of creating that positive school culture and climate. We can think about professional development, and uplifting what staff are requesting, like those mental health supports for students. They might specifically in your district or region be asking for professional development training on top of knowing that services are provided for students. And whenever we add professional development or it's a part of our calendar, we want to make sure that folks have time to both reflect. And if we're adding additional things, then we take things off of folks' work plate, so that their balance of demands on their plate is doable as a human. We can, in the workplace, normalize mental, emotional, behavioral health is just as much a part of health as physical health. And a workplace has a great opportunity to normalize these practices. Some of those ways might be implementing wellness activities into normal routines, like mindfulness minutes, staff walks, breathing activities, humor breaks, opportunities and practices to both express and receive gratitude. Implementing policy is definitely a part of what moves this work forward. So thinking about definitely incorporating the model policy available to you around secondary traumatic stress. But in whatever way we value the work, we can create policy at the district level to support it. And then when we make those plans, every value statement is aligned with actionable items, and that's communicated to our entire work staff. So if we have a value of wellness, if we have a value of supporting organizational wellness, because we know that that has an impact on retention and mobility, we can clearly map out both a menu of services and resources that are available, how demands are acknowledged within the workplace, and communicate all of these items that are intentionally being done around organizational wellness. Really briefly, again, been talking for a while, so I love to check in with all of you. This won't be a waterfall protocol, but what I would love to hear is just a little bit about data. What's an example of data you collect on adult wellness in your district, if you know of any? And if you would also like to share, how do you collect it? So I'll just give you a moment to share in the chat. Whenever you type it, you can send it forward. What's an example of data you collect on adult wellness in your district? How do you collect it? Yeah, mention Panorama. That's a great use of those organizational wellness questions. You can also be utilizing data around attendance and leave and being really thoughtful around and honest around what does this reflect for us? What does this mean if folks are or are not using time off? Great suggestions in the chat. Absolutely wonderful. Keep them coming if you're still typing. I so appreciate you sharing. This is just additional information for everyone on the call today interested in organizational wellness and continuing this valuable work. Another item that I'd like to share, I'm just going to share a few more ideas forward when thinking about this work. This is a fantastic book, Illuminate the Way. It might be of interest for you to check it out, but you're also going to get a link to the specific article that mentions this case study directly out of the book. If you're just interested in the case study, you can read the article for free. I found interesting, it's a case study for autonomy and professional development. And this case study, they had 2 tracks for professional development. One was a traditional track where the professional development was decided by administration, and they saw that 51% of staff chose this option. And then they had an autonomous track, and 49% of staff chose this option. And the autonomous track delved into passion projects that aligned with staff members' values, interests, and needs. And there were a variety of things that were included in this. Staff members could go out and find their own classes and trainings and verify it with admin that it met specifications, but it also aligned with that individual's values, interests, and needs. What was also interesting in this autonomous track is what they saw a lot of is folks started to team up together around shared goals. And maybe even one individual would go out for a training or learn more about a practice, and then they might model it in front of a classroom that other adults viewed, or they would actually become a trainer of a teacher of teachers to share the model. So I just found it a really interesting, another good idea and pathway forward when thinking about how are we supporting adults within the system and within the needs that they have. And just a couple more slides before I leave you today. I also really love this visual, and it'll be 2 slides that you're going to see in just a moment. But if you were to check out the full visual from Child Trends, you would see the overall employee wellness framework within one visual. And I think it really mimics the initial triangle I shared around self-care, group level care, and systems level care. Here you see health status, which similar to that self-level care. Home and community definitely mimics the group level care. And then you just begin to see the systems impact, work experience. In just a moment, you're also going to see work environment, work policies and cultures. So all the opportunities that workplaces have to uplift individuals' wellness, and how important it is to have a balance, both in resources. What are the supports we're offering? What's that menu of services look like? And being really cognizant of overall demands and impacts on those individuals. So here we can see for work experience, the examples are for resources. Are there do folks have the ability for positive work relationships? Do they have the ability to participate in school level decisions, high collective efficacy? Do they feel like their work is meaningful and they have adequate resources to do it? On the other hand, being acknowledging of demands, do folks have autonomy? Are the expectations reasonable of them? Are those relationships positive rather than hostile? Do they have some ability for decision making? And thinking about their overall job stress and the amount of resources they have, training and support and workload being acknowledged. So how important it is to have that balance as an individual. And as I go to the next slide, you'll see again, the continuation, all the opportunities workplaces have to acknowledge overall wellness and the impacts within a workplace of organizational wellness. So as I leave you today, I'll just leave you with this quote: "Hope is a discipline," from Marian Kaba. As I think about the importance of this work, I'm just constantly reminded this is long-term work, and sometimes it is difficult and sometimes it is uncomfortable. But if I practice hope like an exercise, because it's important, I'm building those muscles and those strengths over time to just constantly remind myself of the value of this work. So I just thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Please give Bridget and Julie all the love. I see all the little hand claps and the hearts. I appreciate that so much. While we're giving and showing them some love, I have a few questions in the Q&A. Sam, can you help me with some of the questions that we have for Bridget?
Hi, yeah, I see some excellent questions in here, as well as an answer to a question. But the first one is Clay Henry asks, as a building principal, is there a way that the state could advocate for modified school year calendar as a year-round system? I see it as 3 months on and 1 month off to re-energize all in the education system. This is a way for students, teachers, support staff, and administration to focus for shorter amounts of time and then have a time to refresh. Question mark.
I so appreciate the question, Clay, and I can see some information was shared that, yes, it's being looked at, the balanced calendar across the state. And what I appreciate about our state is that folks across the state can connect with OSPI and the legislature to put legislation forward. That House Bill 1363 is one example of individuals being passionate about projects and seeing the impacts and values of this work, and then connecting with the state to make sure those policy changes happen.
We have another question. I believe it is, the district encouraging self-care feels like a deflection from system responsibility, telling us to take individual responsibility for system level problems, like high caseloads, lack of needed resources for students and staff, and added responsibilities. With the implementation of House Bill 5030, directing school districts to implement a comprehensive school counseling program in all school districts, we're supposed to shift our roles to truly doing the work of school counselors and reducing administrative duties. What has actually happened is that the additional elements of developing a comprehensive school counseling program has been layered over all of our existing duties, and little to nothing has been taken away. All of this is happening while our caseloads are getting higher and students' needs are increasing exponentially. I don't even know what my question is, but I don't know what to do.
Thank you. I absolutely acknowledge that reality and why this work and acknowledging systems level care is so valuable. Again, as I think back to that initial triangle, self-care being the most minimal part of our care, valuable and overall wellness, but ends up getting the most attention, and really most attention needs to go to systems level care. And when it's flipped, when self-care gets the most amount of attention and pushback, we're really telling folks, if you're unwell, without acknowledging some of those impacts and demands from the system, go away, take care of that, and then join us again. And what a shaming experience that is, and just a disconnect from the actual reality. And again, why I think the initial triangle, the child trends, really lays out the opportunities that workplaces have and the acknowledgement around the impacts of where we work and what we do each and every day, especially if we're so passionate and giving within our job professions to the students that we're in front of. Again, I don't know if there's a direct answer to your question outside of that as part of the recent OSPI is continuing the work of organizational wellness practice and supporting districts, because exactly what you and many other are experiencing right now. If you feel comfortable, I would absolutely encourage you to share some of the resources and information with your district. And they can absolutely contact us as well. We want to support all districts and supporting all educators, because that's what supports all students.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about, what does this actually look like in real life? Foundations of our practices, right? We have with us Andrea, Jeannie, and Shane. And in our panel, we have district wellness champions who have been working on organizational wellness from Central Kitsap and Seattle Public Schools. From Central Kitsap School District, we have Andrea Bowman, who is an Assistant Director of Student Services. We also have from Kitsap, Jeannie Becken, who is an Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. She's been a primary teacher and elementary principal prior to her work in HR support. And then from Seattle Public Schools, we have Shane Baguyo, who is a wellness manager. So we're going to go ahead and take some time to have a conversation here. Some considerations to have in mind is we're going to be discussing ideas with leadership, sharing ideas with professional learning community, and leading a discussion with students and how that work looks like, right? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so we can have this amazing conversation. I'll stop sharing our slides. Oh my goodness. So thank you all so much for being here, Shane and Andrea and Jeannie. I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and get started. One sec. Andrea, can you walk us through your work at Central Kitsap and some of the great work that you've been doing?
Thanks, Jocelyn. Hi, everyone. So I do want to preface that everything we've started is just that. I think that we're in a journey. And so I don't want anyone saying, oh, Central Kitsap has it all figured out. We're in the process of figuring it out. But I will be happy to share what we've started and what I think we feel good about. And that if it's replicable for people, great, wonderful. So I've been putting my head around this, like what would people want to hear and know? I kind of want to talk a little bit through the journey because I think that's how people need to experience their own access and their own organization. Our journey actually started during COVID. So I'm sure people are almost tired of hearing that, but that is the reality. OSPI had sent us guidance that we were to come up with some concrete plans to support student well-being and staff well-being. We didn't really know who was going to take charge of that. So it landed here because my role is multi-tier systems, but also social emotional learning and student behavior. So it seemed like I was the person to try to figure that out. So we had brought together 3 different teams of people to look at staff well-being, student well-being, and family well-being. And then we started to involve teachers in that, parents in that, community agencies like Kitsap Mental Health. We have a partnership with Peninsula Community Health Services. We started reaching out to UW Smart Center, our local ESD 114. We were looking for the experts because we knew we didn't know. We knew we didn't know. And then we also had a small grant that came our way through Kaiser Permanente. They gave us some funding and we used their RISE Index to kind of get started somewhere. And so in the RISE Index, there was guidance on what you can do for staff well-being and support. And I just honed in on what I noticed we would probably need during COVID, which it kept talking about social connectedness, because there is a direct correlation between staff sense of belonging and student sense of belonging, like they're inextricably tied. During COVID, we had to figure out how you do social connectedness when we're all in our own spaces and we're being individualized. And we didn't feel like we could put that on the principals to carry that because there was so much they were having to shift to, and we couldn't put it on a school committee. They were all being overwhelmed by this new reality. So we started with some centralized efforts to provide kind of training and webinars on burnout and compassion fatigue, mindfulness practices. So we offered that for the staff, but we also sent out a survey and said, hey, staff, social connectedness is a thing. We don't want you to lose that. What would you be interested in? If we were to host something virtually, or even if it was in person, kind of social distance, like keep the bubble, but you may be together, what would you want? So when we did that, we found out what staff wanted. And so we started to host virtually and in these social distance kind of realities, like painting opportunities and mindfulness and yoga and pretty much anything people said they wanted. We found a lot of people who would volunteer, and then a lot of our supplies did come from that initial donation from Kaiser Permanente, but most of that was free. It didn't cost anything to set up a walk in the woods Okay, that didn't cost me anything. That was just organizing, getting people together. From there, as we started to kind of shift out of COVID, we knew that the impact on everyone, students and staff, was still relevant. We'd also around the same time had built a wellness site for families. So we had a family wellness site and a staff wellness site. We've improved that wellness site now because OSPI's guidance has helped with that. Guidance from Kaiser Permanente helped, and then guidance from the Alliance for Healthier Generation. All of that has some really pretty nice tools. We'd also invested with our ESSER dollars, and Jeannie will talk probably more later on funding, but e-therapy. So we always had employee assistance program, but we knew a lot of people weren't even tapping it and didn't know about it. So we needed to promote that better. And e-therapy, what we also learned is there's a bit of a service gap, probably in everyone's area, on local providers. So like if you were to call right now to get a local provider, it might take you a couple months before you get your first appointment. And if you're really, really stressed out and you need something more immediate, we wanted to have a gap filler, a more of immediate service, and we wanted it to be flexible. So it's an online e-therapy that gets people in within a week or two. And so that's been a great service. And we offer that for students and staff. So that's either one, because we're experiencing that gap for the students too. And of course, we see an interrelationship between student well-being and employee well-being. There's a little bit of a cyclical thing happening there, chicken and egg, right? So we had to still keep attending to the students. So speaking of which, so I already talked about the wellness site. Certainly has all kinds of great resources, virtual calming sites, stuff like that, local resources. We did ask staff, one way we're incentivizing it, we've been promoting it like crazy this year. We've been very intentional. We have an employee well-being committee now. We didn't have that before. It's actually pretty new. We started that last spring. We self-assessed our organization. We've been using that group to help us promote the wellness site. And then when people get into the site, we're incentivizing them to take a survey, but not just any kind of survey. What we're wanting is two things. One, what the resources on the site are they valuing? Because I don't want to keep putting a bunch of things on that they don't care about. So what do they like? What do they not care about? So they've been giving us that feedback. The second is we wanted them to identify what strategies they wanted to commit to support their own well-being. And then we are providing a wellness prize for submitting that survey aligned to that strategy. So if they said that they wanted something that was more like a physical movement type wellness strategy, or something that was more like emotional or mindful, we are attaching a wellness prize to that goal. So just kind of to show them like, hey, we saw you, we heard you, and we're validating that you're also trying that. Trying to say, oh, and then the newest thing that came out of just this year, when I talk about student well-being, I was telling the superintendent, I said, oh, I'm really excited. We updated the employee well-being site. It's looking so good. Look, they can bring it up on their phone. And she said, you know, Andrea, what if students had a well-being site? And I was like, oh, this is so obvious now. But, you get so caught up in what you're trying to accomplish. And so what it hit me was, well, it should be students creating it for students. So we connected with a group called the HOSA Club. So I think it might be a familiar term, the HOSA Club's like Health Organization Club. And we now have a group of students working on a student well-being site. So they're it's high school students creating a well-being site for them, by them, not without guidance, not without evidence-based stuff, but we wanted to speak to kids and we wanted kids to promote it and we want kids to develop it. So we're in the middle of doing that right now. And then I guess I'll finish with one more thought. I think I hit kind of at most things. We do a climate survey. The climate survey, last year, we've always done climate surveys, but we added and infused some well-being questions, which we'd never done before. And it gave us all a pretty big eye opener about what people were feeling and communicating with us. So that gave us even, I think, more incentive to try to figure this out. And then my final thought was, I was reflecting back on one of the comments made about like the comprehensive counseling plan and like it feeling like just more work and nothing came off the plate. We worked on our comprehensive counseling plan, of course, but the reason why I think we're not feeling, and I can't speak for everyone, but I don't feel like we felt like that was particularly a burden because we have invested in more school counselors, our district. So we are actually right now funding them beyond what the state funds us for, but we are aware of the funding from the state coming to kind of continue to support social workers or counselors. And so we've already done that investment up front. We plan to continue to look at that. We also invested in a student and family support specialist who plays a role in a little bit of supporting the counselors implementation and SEL, but he kind of acts also like a little bit of a social worker at the district level who's helping coordinate all the resources. So now when people are like, we're struggling, we have a family who needs, or we have a staff person who's struggling with, we kind of are building this hub so we can be more responsive. And that is more MTSS logic, is being really defining your system so that it's not that you can always prevent everything. You certainly try, like workload reduction, but the reality is we can't take away all the responsibility and we can't take away all the pain of our society. So we have to be ready with a response plan. And so to me, that's really being clear on all of our resources. So we've done that. And then one final thought, and then it can be Shane. Our partnerships really have mattered. So if you're not really working with your local community partners, you're maybe missing out on resources that will help this pressure. Because we have a partnership with Navy Fleet Northwest, and we get military life counselors in that relationship. We have a partnership with ESD 114, and we get student assistance professionals in that relationship. And then of course we partnership with Kitsap Mental Health, and we have a part-time therapist from that relationship. So I just really think it's important that people don't forget these other resources that are available. If you're not tapping those, that's why we're feeling overburdened. So, okay, I think I hit it all, and I'm sure Jeannie, you'll catch something else after that, but Shane's turn.
Yeah, Shane, can you let us know what it's been like at Seattle Public Schools and your relationship with the Alliance for Healthier Generation?
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I know there's a lot of things happening globally, nationally, and in the schoolhouse. It's a very, very busy time of the school year. There's complex feelings and even exhaustion. So thank you everyone for prioritizing staff wellness, and also your students and families. And then thank you also to a lot of the staff members at the school level and at the district level that have really partnered with me and supported our projects moving forward. Thank you also to the SPS members that are here today. So thank you so much. In terms of our work is really aligned to the secondary traumatic stress policy procedure, the EAP policy procedure, and also we are connecting to our culture responsive workforce. We are doing a lot of informational sharing of resources with Smart Health, Alliance for Healthier Generation, and Thriving Schools, and also our employee assistance program, and full scope of that. So not only individual and relational counseling, but our crisis line, our crisis debriefing, our organizational consultation, group presentations. I work a lot with departments and schools around group presentations, and also the work-life resources, which is the financial and legal consultation. We work closely with for staff wellness professional development within the contract time and offering clock hours that way around individual and collective care, and also moving forward talking about wellness teams. In the resource folder, you'll see the sessions from Alliance for a Healthier Generation PD series. We also are working with a provider called Space Between in our schools for our students. They provide mindfulness support, and we are providing that for our educators. And also they provide affinity space for our staff of color. And that was really helpful last year. We worked with a lot of different divisions, departments for racial equity advancement to also do something called openers and closers, which is around adult SEL practices for staff meetings. So any teacher leader, any educator leader, any principal can really do an adult SEL staff wellness practice at an opening or closing of a staff meeting. We also are working a lot with continuous improvement. We're looking at a plethora of data. We look at retention data, climate data, Smart Health utilization data, EAP. We have health and wellness surveys out on the EAP. We're adding that. And then we do a lot of listening sessions that happen at our Racial Equity Advancement Institute last year. And then we also did another listening session last year that we'll be holding those this year, particularly for our staff of color. We unpack our Panorama staff climate survey, and we were noticing that primarily our white staff were answering our staff climate survey. So we were holding space for our staff of color to really unpack that. The primary focus of our listening sessions was really having those questions and then coming back as a team to really think through how can we really reshape and how can their responses guide our work streams and think about projects moving forward. So the data would always be looking at our goals and strategies. At the central office level, we've reestablished our Culture and Climate Committee and rebranded it as a Sunshine Committee, having a coordinated social activity and also an appreciation newsletter internally as we appreciate each other. You can also find that in the resource folder as well.
Oh my goodness, thanks so much, Shane. What a wonderful opportunity to have it, some courageous conversations about how affinity spaces are so crucial and important, especially when we're thinking about the retention of our BIPOC educators and staff, right? So thank you so much. Jeannie, I've got the big question for you, especially about how do we do this in terms of funding? How has Central Kitsap figured how to do funding to provide some of these amazing resources that Andrea was speaking to earlier?
I wish I had a good answer to say, hey, we did this amazing grant and got millions of dollars to support our wellness. And that's just not true. I have to say our biggest resource is the people who are passionate about this work. And Andrea shared a lot of information, but certainly our wellness for students and staff landed in the right place for a leader because of Andrea's passion and interest and alignment with the work of MTSS. And what our students need is exactly what our staff needs. We are in the same place. Our how it manifests itself and how our behaviors come out may look a little bit different, but we are in the same space. So we do have that wellness committee as a result of the House bill, which are a group of people who are interested in this work, who are in classrooms and in schools and in departments that want to help us attend to this issue. The other thing is engaging all leaders. So our association leadership is also working to engage, and they're on that committee and they're very busy, but they support this work as well. So having multiple different groups of leaders who are all focused on wellness for everyone in our organization is important. We used ESSER to fund that e-therapy, and beyond that, it has been small little donations like Andrea talked about for the prizes and incentives, but it really is the human capital coming together to focus on this wellness work. From our district committee to our building leaders to individual staff members at building and departments who are wanting to take time, pause when needed, give grace, have activities, work on connectiveness. So that's really our biggest resource is the people.
Thanks so much, Jeannie. I think there's something you spoke to earlier about the human capital and just thinking about how at Central Kitsap, there has been a shift at how we see or how you all see this as a priority so that you can support and have all the menus of supports for your students is by addressing them through staff and your educators, right? So that's amazing to hear. I'm going to direct this question, Andrea, to you. Was it hard initially to just get folks to participate in wellness activities, and how did you get people interested?
Actually, surprisingly more involvement than we might have guessed. And I think it had to do, especially during that COVID period, because everyone kept talking about how stressed out they were and they didn't have time. But because we asked them what they wanted and we built what based on what they said they wanted, people came to the table. So we, our first year, I mean, we're an organization of, Jeannie, I think you've said we have about 1,400 employees. Is that correct? And so we had consistently about 300 people signing up for these activities, which I felt really good about. Like I wasn't sure I'd get 10, you know, so I was really amazed because people again were signing up by their interest based. It was and passion based. So there, you know, like a lot of times what happens at the school level is you've got people with all different interests, of course, right? So if you've got a couple crafters over here and a couple crafters over there, they're going to have a hard time organizing enough variety of activities to do an interest-based thing at the school level. But because we did it at the central level, we were able to grab the, you know, across the district, multiple schools, affinity type interests, right? We're coming together is what was happening. So not every school would want a book study on Onward by Elena Aguilar, but there were enough district-wide who wanted that. Not everyone wanted rock painting, but there was enough district-wide who wanted that. Not everyone wanted yoga. I didn't want regular yoga. I wanted gentle yoga. I did do that one. So everyone just has their kind of thing that fits for them. We were just helping be curious enough about what people wanted. Now, what does that mean now moving forward? Because we couldn't really sustain that type of activity level, that type of activity even from the central office, because I've now have an awakening, like those are interesting, those are fun, and that's good. But where we really are needing social connectedness, my newest aha, sense of belonging, where does it really come from when we're talking in the workplace? It's not just happening because we're doing things we like to do for fun together. Not that that's not cool. It actually comes out of building trust. Well, how do you build trust? Oh, dang, you have to work together closely and be interreliant with each other. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have to carve time for staff to work together with like professional time together. And when I reflect on any time I start feeling close to my coworkers, every single time it's because we had something we were tackling together that was hard. We leaned on each other. We got it done. Now we trust each other. We started to like each other. We wanted to do that again. And then every time we would replicate that, we started feeling more and more and more like a sense of belonging and a sense of self-purpose. And now we start feeling effective. So it's kind of a little bit old school for me to say this, but I would go so far as to say that the piece we have to attend to with employee well-being in the system is protecting, carving time for staff to work together in teaming structures that are healthy structures that give them guidance on how to do that. Because the more they are effective in that, then the trust builds and the sense of belonging starts to happen. So I do want people to be mindful of that it was much like that system piece. We can talk all day about self-care and do fun little activities, but the reality is when we interrely on each other and then build that trust, things will start to fall into place as well. I think that's part of that reducing workload feeling.
That's great, Andrea, especially when we're thinking about how we foster trust and have those vulnerable conversations to continue to chart the work forward, right? So sometimes it takes a lot of vulnerability from everyone that's sitting in the room and just, you know, continuing to have those conversations. Shane, I'm wondering what type of community engagement did you find out that people were asking for?
What kind of community engagement? Yeah, I think like, so last school year, we did a district-wide staff climate survey along with listening sessions and focus groups. Like I was sharing last time, I think in our staff climate survey, we realized that our staff of color weren't participating as much in our staff climate survey. So we did a lot of listening sessions. We did a couple of listening sessions and a focus group there. And then really having some engagement activities with starting up that district committee. The district committee is different leaders from different departments here, but also having the educator, the school level committee, and meeting those folks on a monthly basis, along with the district leadership committee on a monthly basis, and really kind of looking at that work. We have a lot of things that we learned, looking at a lot of our data sets, a lot of things from our staff. It was really loud and clear that our staff wellness must be prioritized and institutionalized within our system. Some folks were feeling like it was only in writing, but is it really being prioritized and institutionalized? Staff members were preferring to receive support in groups, like what was shared earlier, resources in groups also, and maybe even within their community or even trusted colleagues. Engagement strategies should be more than just numbers or data. If you're only sharing numbers, it should also be qualitative data. Professional development also needs to be way beyond self-care, but also what is the culture? What is a positive culture, and how does that look like? So those are some things that we found. Also, we realized that foundationally, if we didn't have a continuous improvement plan, then we didn't really have a direction. So staff wellness continuous improvement needed to happen not only at the district level, but also at the school level. And so how is that looking like? While our school improvement plans have a culture responsive workforce section, we are kind of working right now with teams on figuring out how can we connect staff well-being strategies on there, and how can folks be looking at retention, climate data, and really picking out strategies and aligning it to plans at the school level. Our lessons learned is that, offering staff wellness courses within the contractual time, within the contractual day, and giving people clock hours is really what we need to be doing, and really institutionalizing that. Also, folks were saying within staff meetings, and that just really needed to happen. And the number one thing that folks are saying over and over again is having all leadership really be examples of staff wellness, not just say it, but also do and be examples of it. Our professional development from Alliance for Healthy Generation, like I was saying earlier, is offering individual care, yes, collective care within groups, but also there is something about wellness teams, and people want to be working on a wellness team and figuring out what is a school issue and how can they work on it together using their own data set and maybe even responding to their own needs. And so kind of thinking about that. And again, having those listening sessions is really critical and important. Our staff of color have different journeys and face different issues within the school setting that we really need to acknowledge. And knowing that staff of color recruitment and retention are critical issues within our workforce, and that needs to be prioritized. So again, not only are we hoping to look at our recruitment retention data and then our climate data, but having those strategies live and breathe in a school improvement plan process, but also even a departmental plan process as well.
This
Thank you.
this is taking me to, I'm like, if we hit rewind, where are some things that you wish you could have done differently in hindsight? Were there other folks that you may have learned from throughout the way, or that you learned from when implementing some of these strategies? Andrea, do you have anything to share with us about that? Is there something you would have done differently?
It's funny because, we did a little pre-talk before this, live session. And at the time I was like, no, I don't know if I would, because we enter how we enter. And I think any move is a good move. So I almost am afraid to say like, oh yeah, I would do things differently, because then I'm worried that people second guess themselves and not just get going. So one, I want to validate, just get going. Any move's a good move. No move would be the error. That would be the error. Now, that being said, I do have a couple tips, I guess, when I was self-reflecting. One is, and it was actually referenced in that Q&A earlier, is that term self-care. We were, trying to take the best guidance we all knew at the time we were getting going in this work, and we were all using the word self-care. And then that became a bad word in everyone's mouth. And we quickly learned, like, that's not good, because we we didn't understand how it felt invalidating. Like it's not that self-care isn't a thing. I need to go brush my teeth every night. Yes, I do. I need to be self-aware when I'm being overwhelmed. And if I need help, I need to go pursue that. So I don't want to say that it's not a thing, but it was also not cool that we hadn't said, how are we going to help you even achieve that? Like, what is going to be our responsibility to come alongside your ability to even do that? And again, I don't even think we have it all figured out, but we're making better moves now. So one, I would avoid self-care and just talk about how are we supporting you, right? So that was one. I think the second one was we were over reliant on CK News. So we have this like internal e-news that goes out. And I kept noticing as we were trying to promote our wellness site, our activities, our information, one, it's not particularly personal, right? Like when you get emails or you get digital stuff, wellness is really relational. So there's only so much you can impart via a digital platform. It's not that it's nothing, but I kept noticing like a lot of the other things that the central office was prioritizing over wellness was always at the top of the CKE News. And anything I was trying to push was way at the bottom when people probably didn't even see it anymore. So we were trying to over rely on that. And I don't think that was particularly helpful. So we have done a couple shifts since then. In the chat, someone had mentioned we have these CK business cards now. And they actually are promoting our wellness site directly. They're real slick. They're real cute. Got a little QR code on them. We were able to distribute those in a variety of ways, both through leaders, through school counselors, but even made little cute little bags so that during PD, we're passing these out with a little stressy thing and the little wellness card. So we're just trying to find more creative ways to be better communicators on what we're trying to do. We have flyers in bathrooms, like anything we can think of to show that we are active and we're an active committee. We're actively trying to support and care. So I think improving communication, reducing the climate survey. I'm embarrassed to say we had like a ridiculously long survey. Like when we added the wellness questions, we meant well, but it just made the survey crazy long. Who wants to take that survey? Nobody. And they don't think we're gonna do anything with it anyway. So like, so we've reduced that climate survey, but we pulled the wellness questions out. And now the committee, we're talking about more of that pulse check-in, that little micro check with just a couple questions, a few questions. We did test that theory with a question about the school calendar, and we had like 900 of our 1,400 employees responded to it. And we did not get those results on the dumb long survey. So we're definitely going to go that route. We're going to ask cabinet, hey, can we do some little micro checks instead of embedding with the climate survey? I'm just trying to see if there was any last thoughts. Oh, yes. One final thought, and then Shane can jump in. So early on during COVID, when we were trying to demonstrate that we're trying to come alongside and be helpful, right, for employee well-being, there wasn't enough district leader vulnerability. And it's part of why they didn't think our efforts were authentic, because it just felt like air and it felt like words and it didn't feel meaningful or real to anyone because there wasn't enough vulnerability. This year, our assistant superintendent, he came in front of all teachers, and then he came in front of all classified staff, and then he came in front of a couple other like clerical groups, right? And he shares some deeply painful experiences he's been going through personally in his life and the journey he's been on to get his own therapies, his own working through what he does. And then he has been consistently following up with our building leaders and still revealing how he's still managing himself and what he's doing about that. So he's even showing his own sleep stats for crying out loud to prove like he's following his own plan. And so that's new. That there was an earth-shifting thing that happened when he put himself out there. And if anyone were to meet him, and if he was watching this recording later, I'll be really embarrassed, but I think it's okay. I think he'd be okay with me sharing that his vulnerability, he is not one to put himself out there. He never has been. He's always been all business, all, I help do the policies, right? But when he put himself out there as a human, it's also impacted by life and how he's having to work through both being a professional and show that he's a human and that we all have this pain and we all have these challenges, and that he wants to validate that if they need to get themselves help, he's saying, please, do. Huge, huge. So that's a go back in time. I wish we could have done that during COVID, but again, things will happen as they happen. Don't allow overthinking to get in the way of employee well-being. Just get going and then you'll learn. Shane.
Yeah, 100%. I think our upper leadership have been very, very supportive of Staff Wellness. So I appreciate you sharing that story. Going to like the things that we like learning differently in hindsight and some of the things that you were saying, Andrea, thank you so much, is that I think, kind of thinking through about the procedure and policy and all of the things that we were doing. Wellness was can be a very big and kind of a vague topic. And what we've learned is that sometimes we have to start creating like a plan or a strategy or a culture where at the central office, we are supporting schools directly for staff wellness. So I think that's one plan or that's one specific strategy. And then we have to figure out then how can we support schools to support schools on its own. So we're kind of thinking through that way too. And then also the next step is, what is our central office plan to support central office? And so those were kind of three different parallel processes that we're doing in thinking about those steps. And really using not only the resources and really unpacking the resources and saying, how can we have shifts in the resources, or how can we create the resources or cater the resources, or what else do we need? But fundamentally, what are the resources first? Are we using it? And then how can we have other things to supplement or support moving forward? I also want to be able to answer that question in the Q&A. At any time, staff members also can reach out to me and or our contracted social worker for that one-to-one support. We are here to hold space, to listen carefully, hold space for emotional support, and offer resources, not only through the EAP, but also through all of our resources in the local area. We have, Crisis Connection. We know different resources through your own behavioral health services plan and such, and we're able to hold that space and kind of walk you through that as well.
Thanks so much, Shane and Andrea. We're approaching my last question. If you had one little piece of advice that you could do that could be applied, what would you give to our listeners today?
I'll just say two, and then I'll throw over Shane. Just find the passionate people who want to do the work, because too often we're like, well, how are we going to get paid? Where's my extra stipend, extra hours? I'm not going to get this done if we're looking for extra money. Like, when did we all get extra money in our organization? So at the end of the day, when people find it passionate, they care about it, they find the time. Like, I find the time. I don't feel like I have extra time. That didn't suddenly feel like I have extra time. But what's happening is I care so much that not just for myself, but for everyone in our organization, we genuinely I actually care if they're doing okay. I don't feel like I have all the answers, but I'm going to stay on it because I don't want to let it go, and I do care. So if find people who actually want to do this work, and it'll get done. So that's number one. Number two, just go slow and start small, and it won't feel sufficient. You'll feel like there's so much we're not addressing. But that's why, like Shane talked about, like setting like a continuous plan. Like, we just have a year one plan for right now. And then our year two plan won't look like the same year one plan, because we'll have already built some of that or already done some of that. And now we're looking for the next piece of it, and we'll just build it over time. We'll look back. I promise you what's going to happen. You're going to look back 2 years, 3 years, 5 years later, and you won't believe that you came as far as you did. And but it's hard to believe that when you first get going. You feel like you're going to get stuck. So go slow, give yourself grace.
I think for me, it really is about starting up your committees from representative work groups. Really kind of thinking about who are those classroom teachers, who are those support staff members, the instructional staff members, clerical staff members, who are those people that can meet with you and talk to you about what is going on, that can review the resources, that you can roll ideas by, that you can get insights and input from on a regular basis. And folks that you can ask them, how does this land with you? I have met with folks that say, you know, but how does this connect with me in the classroom? Or how does this connect with me in the workstation? And those conversations are always going to be super meaningful as you kind of think about the resources and what people need. Because ultimately, it really is about what people need, and that's staff wellness, in my opinion. I think the other thing is that really reviewing all of your resources from OSPI, Alliance for Healthy Generation, EAP, Washington Wellness, and taking a look at those things. And then really going into the Action Center. And so the Action Center from Alliance for Healthy Generation has the secondary traumatic stress checklist. That's really helpful. And then also it has the staff well-being best practice, and having those conversations with the people on your committee and saying which ones will make sense for us. It was really that committee that said, you know what, foundationally, we need a continuous improvement plan. If we are going to do anything, we need to know all of our metrics. We need to know that before we can have goals and recommendations and strategies moving forward. And so I think that has been super, super helpful for me and our work here.
Well, thank you so much, Shane and Andrea, for being here. I know Jeannie had to leave a little bit earlier, so we appreciate her as well. We're going to go ahead and share some resources here. One sec. And we're launching our poll. Please feel free to enter some of that information. Thank you so much. So here are some of the resources we have. We've been dropping our PowerPoint slides and a resource sheet. You will have links to all of these amazing resources that were mentioned throughout the webinar. So please feel free to grab those. If you didn't get a chance, please feel free to check out our graduation equity webinar webpage at OSPI, where you'll also find the PowerPoint and the resource sheet. In the resources, you'll have an opportunity to check out funding, tools and videos. Of course, other websites like Shane had mentioned, Alliance for a Healthier Generation, and Central Kitsap Employee Wellness site as well. And of course, get a chance to connect with us all who were here today for this webinar. Next month, we're going to have our mentoring educators for diversity and inclusion. That is what we're highlighting for January 10th. Please feel free to tune in. And then, of course, we have our poll. Thank you so much to those who are submitting their feedback. We are always reviewing that and making sure that we can make some modifications with each webinar. So thank you so much. It's really appreciated. If you need free clock hours, please feel free to go ahead and get tuned in via YouTube as well. Ronnie Larson, who is our administrative assistant at Student Engagement Support, feel free to contact her as well. If you're watching this video later and the process changes, you can register for clock hours through PD Enroller and complete the evaluation. Thank you so much again for being here. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.